And to what we all came for, our chat with Rank the Vote. Super excited to be hosting both Adam and David, and I will be passing over the screen share. Adam is the founder and the interim executive director at Rank the Vote, and David Green is the national organizer there. So we're so happy to have them with us tonight. They're going to give us a little bit of a presentation, and then I'm hoping we can get into a little question and answer conversation afterwards, because we have so much that we can learn from their success and hopefully do some collaborating in the future. So would you like to take over?
We'll hand it over to David Green. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. All right. Can everyone see my screen all right?
Yes.
Great. So it's so good to be here. I'm David. I'm a national organizer with Rank the Vote. This conversation is a real intersection for me of two large interests that I've had in my life. In February 2019, I joined the Yang Gang. I was actually a co-founder of the Massachusetts Yang Gang, and I also in that month joined VCMA, Voter Choice Massachusetts, which was the movement in Massachusetts to pass ranked choice voting. So in the past 2 years, I've been really involved in that ranked choice voting movement. And it's been so great to come onto the team with Rank the Vote, trying to get this passed across the nation. I just want to express fully how intersectional this is for me by pulling together these tweets that Andrew Yang has made over time. This is from 2019, going through 2020, and then to 2021. He's very interested in ranked choice voting because it's just he's very into common sense, nonpartisan solutions, and that is the epitome of what ranked choice voting is. So just quickly to do a recap on ranked choice voting. It would be great if y'all could put in the chat maybe like a 1 to say that that you're not particularly familiar with ranked choice voting, a 2 to say you're somewhat familiar, or a 3 to say that you're like very familiar. Get on with it. And then I can judge from that. Awesome, cool. So it's looking like we're pretty darn familiar. So I'll just breeze through these slides. And yeah, so we have a normal ballot here, pick one. Instead, we can have a ballot that is first choice, second choice, third choice, very exciting. And the way that we do the counting is that we have, we count the first choice votes, see if there's a majority. If there's a majority, great, we got a winner. If there's not a majority in there, then we get rid of the last choice person, and then we take the second choice votes instead of the first choice votes for that individual and reallocate them. And then we do it again if there's no majority, reallocate. And now we have the winners, or the winner, who is this majority purple candidate with 55% of the vote. Hopefully that made sense. If it didn't, we can go back to this after the presentation and you can ask any questions you want, but it's good that we have people quite familiar with ranked choice voting here. I would like to move on. Oh yeah, so practical nonpartisan solution. It eliminates spoilers and vote splitting, encourages more people to run, curbs negative campaigning, gives voters more voice and more choice, and makes politics work for all of us. So hopefully something we can all get behind. I would at this point like to pass it over to Adam Friedman, who is the executive director of Rank the Vote, who's going to talk about what Rank the Vote is and what we're trying to do here.
Sweet. I'm going to be real slick and share my screen on the same slide. Presentation mode. Oh, so seamless technology. I'm the founder of Rank the Vote and the founder of Voter Choice Massachusetts. So we did become the largest ranked choice voting statewide movement in the country. Hope to be eclipsed by another state in the near future. It took a while to get where we were. The campaign was ultimately not successful, but the organizing model that we used, we found to be incredibly valuable, and we are now exporting it rapidly to form a very strong foundational component to increase the likelihood of future successes, and kind of in a more epic way, to bring ranked choice voting out of the nerd stream and into the mainstream. Really get it. This is a cultural campaign as much as it is a political and legal campaign. There are no shortcuts. The biggest obstacle, why don't you guys shout it out? What do you think the biggest opposition to ranked choice voting is?
Complexity.
Yeah,
Fear.
ignorance.
Fear of change.
These are all great answers. It's
No one
just,
understands it.
that's right. No one's heard of it. It's worse than that. No one's heard of it. And then those that have heard of it, it takes some time for them to understand it, not see it as complex, not see it as exotic, become familiar and start to realize, oh my gosh, this changes a lot of things that ails us in our system. Every campaign has to grapple with this. And that's why we focus on really building a strong grassroots movement to really serve as that foundation. And movement, we define that more specifically as grassroots capacity. What do I mean by capacity? And I'll get into that in a second. We create a step-by-step program, a method, if you will, an organizing method for these groups to make this happen. So the step one is just to get together, have meetings, promote these meetings aggressively and get good turnout. This is a solved problem. It's not hard to get good turnout if you know how to do a little bit of online advertising and targeting. Step two is get real. So this is a big pitfall that activists step into. They get 3 to 5 people in a room. They're like, ranked choice voting is amazing. We're so smart. We know all about it. We're going to go file a bill, or we're going to collect signatures and do a statewide ballot measure and run a campaign to win it. And it just doesn't happen that way. That's a myth. Everybody's been making the same mistake for decades, since the late 90s when this was put on the map, and particularly in 2000 with Ralph Nader and Al Gore split the vote in Florida for president. And so we want to make sure that people get real. You're going to go through a process where you have to really become big. And that's step 3. And by capacity, to revisit that concept, we literally mean these 3 elements: growing your people, your list of email supporters or phone supporters, raising grassroots dollars, and then eventually bigger ticket dollars, bigger donors, money, and then endorsements. And that means training up speakers to give the same awesome slideshow talk about ranked choice voting to other organizations, building them first, getting their endorsement, and then forming a coalition or giving a coalition baton to another group. And then step 4, once you have some of that basic infrastructure and metrics, objective, observable proof of traction, get credibility, build an advisory board. The advisory board is absolutely key for bigger dollar fundraising and more in VIP endorsements, which you absolutely need, particularly for a large statewide campaign. Step 5, I make it sound so easy, don't I? Get RCV. Activate that real campaign when you're ready. You transition from a grassroots volunteer effort to a pro campaign shop. And you hire people who know your particular flavor, your jurisdiction, to advance RCV. We at RankTheVote do not prescribe the particular policy proposal or necessarily the legal or political pathway to the RCV law itself. We provide the kind of basic foundation of grassroots community and movement building. We provide it with some prescription around some structure. And it's a team-based approach. So these little boxes are teams. This is kind of an example. We offer this up. These are not set in stone, of course, but they've worked really effectively for us and for the other states that we're working with now, which I'll get into. Executive team, messaging team, which is centralized. And then you'll see in gold the 3 strategy tracks or the growth tracks, the capacity growth, people, money, endorsements, and the teams that support those tracks. And then the purple support teams that really support the tip of the spear, which is that objective metric growth. So our proposal is really around understanding each state's growth sequence based on their political environment, and those activists determine that. But the typical sequence, what we propose people do and what's worked really well so far is first get some founders together. That could be 3 to 5 people, 5 to 10 people. Have them meet weekly for 4 to 6 weeks and focus solely on launching a high turnout kickoff meeting. Yes, they've been doing it on Zoom to good success. We're raising between $1,200,000 and in the state of Georgia, in the case of Georgia, $5,500 at their launch with 83 attendees. And then fill out a roster with team leads, deputy leads, and members right at that first meeting and get people already into a posture of action, goals, accountability. It's a lot to stand up really rapidly. So there's a lot of kind of early jitters and learning curve for folks. So we kind of say, take your time, take it bit by bit, read our playbook, et cetera, which we're going to share with you all if you haven't seen it already. And then we set some basic goals. Live outreach team to sign up that first bit of supporters, the endorsements and speakers bureau teams to train those first speakers, and then the fundraising team, of course, to raise the first grassroots dollars. And this is not a fly-by-night quick fix. This takes years, particularly if we're talking statewide, but even for a locality, a municipal environment or a county, if folks want to start out at that level, which sometimes is prudent to do, takes at least 2 years. There's really no shortcuts. It's just the nature of changing election law and changing 200 years of voting tradition. So what people are doing wrong is they're having too few organizing meetings, small numbers of people, and then they have public education events with low turnout, and they're not really building the list. They're just kind of saying, we need to vaguely educate the public, but they're not bringing it home and building their internal capacity so that they can prove that they have that traction. And then, let's get some bill language together. Let's get a few of the usual suspect legislators that'll support anything forward thinking, 3 to 5 folks that have very little influence. And then let's go lobby the State House with our tiny list and our math engineering folks and our third party boosters. And the result is no one cares. Sorry. It's pretty, let's just say it's straight shooting. So what we try to get folks to get on to a track instead is a real campaign. Focus on those metrics, assess viability from people who know what they are doing. Campaign professionals, grass top leaders who have experience, moving difficult legislation, and national orgs that have seen this happen in many states. And then when you are ready to finally flip the switch and convert to the enactment campaign. And again, for a big state like Ohio or Florida, that could be 4, 5, or 6 years down the road. For a smaller jurisdiction, it could be 2. So the green pro help, get experienced campaign operatives to guide your strategy, pay them, professionalize, get at least 20K on your list for a medium-sized state. We kind of use the metric 1% of your population is probably a good thing to shoot for before flipping the switch for enactment. You should be making thousands of calls, not 20 or 30 calls to the State House. Don't bother if it's that small. Make thousands. So you need a big list because out of that, of course, is a 5 or 10% slice that will actually make the calls. So you really need that big basis. And then your grass tops, which is other organizational leaders, not just fringy groups or the usual suspects, but respected groups that the legislature or the voters really see as mainstream. And then, of course, an advisory board of very diverse luminaries from all sorts of backgrounds. This is kind of an example to press the point even further, but I think you get the idea. Where the rows here, the gray tiles are the strategy tracks, people, money, endorsements, and media is one as well. We recommend lighting that up later, at least a month or 2, not really being super serious about that until, a year or 2 rather, down the road. But this is just a quick overview of what we kind of were working with in Massachusetts. Massachusetts, our list was 200 to start. This is an interim. We measured our metrics rigorously every single month from the beginning of building that movement. We ended up with over 60,000 supporters on the list, about 7,000 volunteers active at any point during the years, and then $10 million were ultimately raised toward the end of the campaign. So I'm giving you charts that were just 1 year in. We were kind of on our way, and you see it's not exponential, it's linear. If you guys figure out some viral techniques and social media marketing strategies to make it hyperbolic or parabolic, not hyperbolic, parabolic, or exponential, by all means, let's share that knowledge and help export it to the states that are active. This was so people, money, and endorsements charts, where we tracked how many speaking gigs we were setting up, meetings with VIPs that we would recruit, and then the actual endorsements given. earned media, which came with no media strategy whatsoever. We focused on those first 3 tracks, and the media came to us for interviews. We had hundreds upon hundreds. We had the Boston Globe endorsing RCV 6 times since starting in 2018. So our progress with Rank the Vote, we formed Rank the Vote at the beginning of 2020, January 2020. And we wanted to do 10 states by the end of the year. And we blew past that. We did 17 launches in 2020, and we just launched a few more this year. We're on track to do 36 states under our purview, working with us, getting coached by us by the end of this summer. And then there's another 14 states that have either mature movements or independent organizations that have their own approach. But this was a long time coming. It was overdue to have some real authentic grassroots broad-based movement happening, and that's what we plan to do. And we are having now these groups report their metrics up to us, and we're aggregating them nationally. So these are where these groups are at right now. These numbers for national effort are tiny. We know that it's COVID, and the activists are learning the techniques, and it takes several months for them to really get going. And a lot of the list building we did was out in the field with clipboards at big events. So we just can't wait until all that energy is going to burst forth onto the scene once everyone's vaccinated and we're ready to do that. And then this is their money chart. So total among all the states we're working with, nearly 80,000 or so raised and hundreds of donors. So the upcoming states in a pipeline, which you guys might want to hook into, we have founders group formed that are planning their launch in Idaho, Iowa, and South Dakota. We have founders group currently forming, so a little earlier along, in Arkansas, Hawaii, Mississippi, and Wyoming. And then brand new territory that we're kind of just starting to make contact, North Dakota and West Virginia. Here's some asks for you all. Obviously, in the existing states, if you're there, join the teams that are there. We have once we stop the screen share in a minute, David will share the states page on our website where you can link up with all those states that are up. And then upcoming launch states, definitely join the founders teams if you want to help plan for the launch, statewide launch. And then help us finding more endorsements for ranked choice voting, helping the states, helping find major donors. If you guys have connections, you're networked into someone who knows someone. Joint fundraising is really important. Like a lot of what we're trying to do nationally is building that funder infrastructure to fuel a strong field team and eventually start linking the states that are ready to major donors that can help professionalize them and get them to campaign readiness. So as you see here, the obvious groups on the scene are coordinating with us. They promote a lot of the state activities on our behalf and help us out. So that's the basics. I'll stop the share. And there may have been a lot of questions here.
Yeah, we did start getting a few questions in the chat, but do we want to, are we ready to transition into like a question and answer session, Q&A? Awesome. So yes, we have 3 questions so far. So I'll call on those folks to go. And then,
Okay.
if
So
you,
Eileen has a tongue-in-cheek, I've heard
Yeah.
star is better. Can you phrase that in the form of a question?
Well, actually, I was not intending for that to necessarily be a question. I just was making a cheeky comment. But I mean, from a lot of people, I've heard that, well, let's talk about ranked choice voting. We can talk about star later kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
Since that's where the branding is in, where all of the movement building has been on ranked choice voting. So let's just skip over that. My real question was more like, when you have such a long timeline, which I love, by the way, I love that you're realistic about it and that you're upfront about it. How do you keep your volunteers engaged and enthusiastic? And how do you keep the element of fun over such a long period of time?
Fun? I don't understand.
Yes.
Yeah. It is fun. It's fun because we're all here and we're inspired when we see progress toward the vision that we share, because we know we're going to get there. That's fun for me. I don't know about you all. And then there's we form bonds in society and community around that. on that mission. So we keep people focused on action so that they produce, so that we're inspired by how awesome we are producing and getting toward that. Even if we lose a campaign, we know that we planted a very strong flag. In Massachusetts, we got the highest population to vote in favor of RCV in the country. We've created a magnet for raising $10 million. Like, I'm giving you some of the bigger ticket things in the end, but all the interim stuff is important. Like those little line charts, I showed those at every monthly meeting, and the line would just like creep up, and people are like, wow, we just like upped our list by 15% this month. That's awesome. Let's keep it going. And when you do the metrics, this other qualitative stuff starts to appear. Like it's not about being a nerd and just thinking about math and numbers. It's that by doing that and by being aggressive about that, you're like the more people you have on your list, you're rolling the dice that many more times to finding a rock star volunteer, team lead, to finding like the head of a huge union, which actually happened, like head of Mass Teachers Association, biggest union in the state, a major donor. We got like anonymous checks for like 10 grand and 15 grand, like a year, 8 months in, and like totally fired everybody up. So you get kind of cool stuff, and like media, all the media that came our way as well. That was very positive.
Thank you so much. That's a great answer. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Robert, I believe you had a question next.
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, I guess my question just basically, I know some people, are concerned about just election this past cycle and, counting votes, and then ranked choice voting just seems to add a big complexity. I mean, it doesn't, it's not much for, good, strong computers to kind of figure that out, but just with transparency's sake, it might just turn a lot of people off if they don't see that it's nice and easy and clear.
Yep.
That that, I mean, so what do you think what do you think on the future of that, on some kind of blockchain, some kind of open source, something that can't be hacked? And and if we can just kind of stem the tide in that direction, maybe the rest will topple. One can hope.
I think you're right on the money. I mean, I think the future shows that, like, there's a company called Votes, VOATZ, and the founder, Nimit Sawhney, loves ranked choice voting. Votes is a company that is like moving voting onto the blockchain. That's what it is. This immutable ledger where you cast a vote and it's permanent, like you can't tamper with it, is ideal for this application. It's ideal for anything the government publishes, especially, votes, ballots, anonymized yet permanent and immutable. So that's definitely the direction we're going. That's a very different like tack. I mean, we can discuss that in a salon format, but our mission is to enact ranked choice voting into law. In terms of those, like, and so we are thinking like campaign strategists of like, what are the objections that come up in a public political environment that's gonna create fear, uncertainty, and doubt about it? And that's one of those things. People are like, it's convoluted, it's complicated, it's a black box, it's an algorithm. There's like a lot of language that's like freaks, normal average voters out about it. There's great responses to that. A high schooler can write the ranked choice voting runoff tabulation in an Excel formula in 10 minutes or 5 minutes. Like, anybody can do that. The problem of transparency and like exposing the ballot is a problem whether you have plurality and RCV. Look what just happened. Like, this is just plurality voting. People are still questioning the results. It's not a problem of RCV itself. And so we would call for whatever voting system that you have, you need to have transparency in the ballots themselves in terms of some representation of what votes happened. And so if we have the rankings available from jurisdictions that use it, you could have a disinterested third party rerun the tabulation themselves and simulate it to be a check on whatever the government does to run it. Like, that's a trivial technological thing to do. So people have, you can have an MIT consortium just do that, and then people are confident. That's, for instance.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you. I know we had a question from Florence in the chat, and David answered it in the chat, but I didn't know if there was maybe some more follow-up to that question.
Oh yeah, how do we
wanna
count RCV? So We actually recommend using like these great platforms online that just already know how to do it. They've coded it in. OpaVote is one that we use all the time. Rankit.vote is another tool that's free. You could probably look up, there's probably is an Excel formula, like if you just say Excel formula for instant runoff voting, or single transferable vote. Those are the kind of academic terms for this. Single transferable vote is like the proper academic term for this system, which I'll write in the chat. So if you do a Google on that, you'll probably find what you need for counting.
Awesome. Thanks.
Mhm.
Will, do you want to ask your question? I know you were worried that it might be too in the weeds, but let's go for it.
Yeah, so this might be sort of technical and niche, but in my state in New York, we have this electoral fusion thing where the same candidate can appear on multiple line items in the ballot under different parties. And I know New York City has ranked choice voting for nonpartisan, but they didn't implement it for partisan things. I think partially because they were like, oh, it gets confusing with electoral fusion and we're just not going to touch that.
Yep.
I'm wondering if you guys like have a vision for how those two things would interact.
Yes. So great question for the in the weeds people in the states that have fusion. I will address it, but let's, so right now, oh gosh, we have to look at, it's all about the ballot design, the ballot layout. So if you have a ballot layout where you have people are voting for the party and then the candidate name is under the party, but each party has its own section, that is not compatible with ranked choice voting. You're gonna have a hard time with that because you can have two people, like the Dem and the Working Families Party have the same person. But if you have instead a candidate-based system, and then it says two party names under the candidate, no problem. RCV fits with that on the ballot. And I wish I had some designs to show you. I'm just like, it's a pretty kind of corner case for states that don't have it. It's not applicable, it's not a problem. But Connecticut's also facing that. In their legislature, I think they just got a bill out of committee a study bill to study RCV, and that's a big thing that they need to study to ensure it'll work with fusion voting. Cross-party endorsement is another term for that.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Sorry, very technical.
I mean, you're in the room with the math crew, so I think that it works here.
Bring it.
Go for it. Catherine, you're up
Okay.
next.
So there's like a couple of questions that I'll queue up. So one is, I remember chatting with you another time, you were talking about, and it relates to Eileen's earlier question, like how do you keep engagement when over such long periods of time?
Mhm.
And you mentioned like in the emails, the weekly emails, you kind of have this heroes narrative where you're following the metrics. And if there's not really awesome metrics, then you have to, do a feature or something. So if you'd kind of talk about like how you kind of keep people subscribed, engaged that are just on the volunteer list. And then also I wonder if you and David, somebody would pull up the kind of the states listing on your page and just kind of go through kind of the state they're in, but particularly for the folks that are here. We have like Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, New York, and Pennsylvania. So if you kind of just give like a little status update.
Okay, so those two big questions. So the first thing is, how do you keep people excited? What do your email blasts look like, et cetera? I want to share with you guys, this is the Bible of how we do what we do, the Ranked Choice Voting Movement Playbook. I just posted that in chat. I think David posted it earlier. Please take a look at it. It's 20-some pages. It's pretty fun to read, I think. And in that, there is a cache of every email blast that I wrote and then the person who took over for me wrote in the first 2.5 years or something of the VCMA org. So it's cool. Fortunately, our political system keeps producing little problem examples for us to highlight, to re-emphasize that we need this, like spoilers and vote splitting and candidates from historically disenfranchised communities that run in the same race and then fight amongst each other publicly to say who should clear the field so that the party darling or whomever is the best funded should be the one running, which is totally backwards for a country that is trying to move forward and allow all comers to share their ideas and be a part of our democracy. So there's some great takeaways from that. And then the hero narrative, again, if we're working and we're productive, we have cool stuff to report. after every meeting, you could say, you know, we got 50 new people that have joined teams. Our teams are like twice as big now. I mean, there's all sorts of ways you can say, you know, even if it went from 100 to 120, which aren't big numbers, you just say they grew 20%. Like, oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Or we went to one, when our list was 600 people, we went to the Women's March and signed up another 600. Oh no, we signed up like almost, I don't know, our list size doubled, you know, like, wow, like in the early stages. So that gets eyeballs, like people, it attracts people. And then you use that for the, and then every endorsement you get, you can send an email to announce that, you know, every new advisory board. After we got that, we went to, you know, we've got some esteemed universities, went to Harvard and got a Nobel Prize winning economist, Eric Maskin, Professor Eric Maskin. That was a big deal. He in turn got Lawrence Summers, who many of you know was Treasury Secretary under Clinton, Chief Economic Advisor under Obama, like very respected economist. And then business leaders, labor leaders, faith leaders. So your second question, Catherine, was what? I forgot.
Oh,
Through the states.
yeah, if you could kind of
Oh, yeah.
pop up the kind of.
David, do you have that link?
Yeah, I have. Do you want me to like, I can share screen and then you can talk?
I mean,
about
just
it, or-
click. People can just look at it. I don't like
Okay,
sure.
for sure. Cool.
Yeah, throw it in the chat. You guys take a look at that. Like these are the groups we're working with, and we're also tracking folks who.
Oh, we
We're not
also have
working-
folks that are watching like on YouTube and Facebook. So if
good
you
call.
would mind screen sharing,
Yeah,
David?
thank you.
Okay, sounds great.
So for those who are elsewhere, go to www.rankthevote.us/states. And David is sharing it.
I think, do you want to go through Arizona, Georgia? I think there were a few ones of particular interest.
Yeah, I mean, let's just make sure we got those represented on this call. I think most of them, there is something happening. Pennsylvania is going to launch at some point. I don't know if they're on this list yet, but we're partnered with March on Harrisburg.
That
Megan,
event's March 20th.
yeah, on
So
it.
I'm already plugged in with them.
Yeah.
Woohoo!
Yeah, they seem.
Yeah, Oregon, we know there's a kind of, Oregon already has a little pro level funding and they have a nice coalition being built. So the grassroots are going to be more like narrowly focused on just building the list, grassroots dollars and easier endorsements, and then leave it to kind of the pro strategists to like do the legislative engagement. They might do ballot, they might not, they're deciding. That's in Oregon. They haven't started the grassroots component yet, but we just had a meeting with them like a week ago, and they want our help to do that. Nevada is kind of fresh. If someone is in Nevada, we would love to work with you to form the founding team and work toward a launch if you want to do that. But all the other states have groups, active groups that we actually launched Arizona, we launched Georgia, we launched New York, we launched North Carolina, and we launched Michigan as well a couple of years ago.
Cool.
Yeah, bam, there it is.
Bam.
All right. More questions? People have hands raised. Just shout it out.
Keith's
Yeah,
up.
Keith was next, then Ron, then another from Will, and Catherine, I think, still has another one.
I see.
Hey, yeah, this is Keith. So I hear you on the idea of like people are just not going to take a campaign seriously until there's like a lot of people behind it. So it seemed like I got the sense that like kind of you're not necessarily having your volunteers like do more like direct action or kind of like spreading the message like out to people that might not be too familiar with RCV until you kind of cultivate those numbers. So just like kind of wondering what you, and I'm sure I'm like glancing through the kind of document that you sent here, trying to see if I might find the answer, but just curious, like, you know, what you might have volunteers do in that kind of still building, but not yet quite ready to, you know, like go full force campaign mode, like what you have them do in that kind of interim stage.
Yeah, I mean, if people know that this is a movement, and a lot of the movement is about education and is about building power so that you can win, or you're going to increase your probability of winning, then they're like, here's how we do that, and they buy in. You share it with the room. They'll grab a clipboard. So like the kinds of things are you kind of asking, like, what are the easy things volunteers can do if they're like kind of casual and they're not like fully invested? Or
Yeah, just when you're in that stage where you're not
building the base,
where you're still like kind of building your volunteer numbers. Like, what I'm curious what you're having volunteers do at that stage.
All the things I just described. I mean, they join the live outreach team and grab a clipboard, go to an event, and hang with like 5 or 10 other really cool volunteers. They all kind of like practice a 20-second elevator pitch, and then they go out and give that pitch to like all these other people at some event, whether that be, and the events we target are usually political events or events where there's politically conscious people. So that could be anywhere from a slam poetry thing if it's super small. Remember those guys? Oh, I miss those days. To a town hall for a politician, to a rally, an outdoor rally, a protest. We went to the women's march, and then we went to like an anti-Trump rally, and then we went to a pro-Trump rally and signed up supporters. We go everywhere. It's truly nonpartisan. People, when they're in a group and they're like supporting each other, they can be kind of an entry-level activist and do some cool stuff, and then they start leveling up their skills immediately. And then sharing on social is an obvious one, like just tell your friends, relational, bring 5-10 people to the next meeting. If they come to a meeting, they're typically like ready to do work because they came to a meeting. That's already, they're already in that segment. Yeah. What's the next one?
Yeah, thanks. You good with your question, Keith? You done?
Yep. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
Okay. Okay.
Also, I know we're coming up to 9:30. We are always able to go over because we're a very curious bunch, but let me know as soon as
I share
you
that
feel like hard
philosophy.
stop
I'm
it.
okay with it. Yeah.
All right, great. Ron is next.
Hey, so I'm hooked up with the Michigan chapter. Actually the Southwest Michigan chapter for Rank My Vote, the Ranked Choice Voting Group. And the one thing that I've asked them, and they're kind of like a little bit hesitant on, is how to deal with pockets of very conservative communities that they're old school kind of ordeal. And especially in the city that I live in, it's super red. The county is super red as it is anyways. And so wanting to kind of have like a game plan to bring to that chapter as far as saying, hey, I did some researching and I talked to a few people. This is what they're suggesting to do. And so again, how do we go about hitting those super hard conservative pockets in order to make sure we do get ranked choice voting at least on the bill in the state house?
Great question. So there's a number of ways. It's like good marketing. It's like your audience. So those kinds of voters and politicians and those in that community are going to think a little bit differently than like liberal communities, for instance. So you've got to tune your message to that. So a lot of persuasion is like a new idea, knocking out like these initial knee-jerk responses, like, who does this benefit? There's a lot of cynicism. I argue there's more cynicism on the right about new ideas and stuff. Like things are cast as like, this must be a liberal conspiracy to take over, blah, blah, blah. So you immediately need to show this can help folks on the right, which is a little bit partisan, you're pandering, but it does help folks on the right in areas where there's majority conservative desires. Like that's exactly what it should do. It should support the majority in that community to have better representation. So you want to show examples. There's a lot of examples where there's members running for US Senate and US House all over the country, where Tea Party independents are splitting the vote, or libertarians are splitting the vote from the Republican. So if you elevate that in your conversations, that can be persuasive. Another bit of persuasion is the argument of, I'm not sure where you guys are, if you guys have 2-round runoffs around Michigan in the cities, do you?
Pretty much, it's pretty much on the ticket. And so once we vote, whatever the results are, they're done. Even though here in Michigan, our systems, they are set up to take ranked choice, to do ranked choice voting. It is just pretty much getting the people, like you said, more engaged
familiar.
with ranked choice voting.
Well, they just need to know what it is. Yeah. Okay,
yeah.
so runoff. Well, I was asking if there's 2-round runoffs that are currently happening in your cities or towns, which in Massachusetts are all over the place. Like in a lot of parts of the country, they're doing 2-round runoffs. You save taxpayer money by collapsing 2-round runoff election styles into a single runoff ranked choice voting. So if you're not familiar with those, just kind of Google that, like what's a 2-round runoff or, majority runoff. That's a good conservative argument. You're saving taxpayer money. You're making stuff more efficient. And then the third thing is majority rules. That's like kind of a mainstay right-wing thing. Like, don't you think the majority should rule in this country? Yet people are winning elections with 20 or 30% of the vote. Extremists can win in our system. We want ranked choice voting to ensure that those who really represent the people and represent the majority can advance. That language is very fraught. If you're in communities of color, majority can be taken as a dog whistle for the white majority. So it's not something that you want to throw around willy-nilly. Like, you want to talk about consensus and some broad support. So you have to be very careful about this stuff. Not an expert. The other way to do this, sorry if I'm going long, is validators. Finding Utah is a very red state. And Republicans control Utah, and they love ranked choice voting, and they're using ranked choice voting for their party elections. John McCain, late John McCain, loved ranked choice voting. He has all sorts of cool quotes of endorsement. You can use these kinds of examples. And there's Republicans in Virginia and a couple other states as well, using Texas. Okay, done.
Yep, that sounds good. Thank
Okay.
you. Thanks.
Sorry for that long answer.
No, you're good. And then I just a little comment. I don't know if you saw it or not, but Kevin Lee, he's also from Michigan too as well. He said there's no runoffs in Michigan.
Okay, I thought Ferndale or the cities had it, but I could be wrong. Okay, so that's not going to work in Michigan. Sorry.
No.
All right. Strike that from the record. Hold on one. David will take the next one. I actually have to grab this call. It'll be like 10 seconds, 20 seconds.
I'm the best. It'll be great.
I think Will is next in our queue.
All right, this one is maybe not directly about ranked choice voting, but you guys seem to be real sort of experts in organizing and movement building and sort of ramping up, and you've spun up, big state chapters in a lot of states. I just looked at the New York RankTheVote website, and it looks pretty impressive. So I guess my question was, in terms of spinning things up, the New York chapter clearly looks like a legal entity. They've got an address and everything. You showed us those graphs with, lines going up over, 2, 3, 4 years. At what point on the graph do you go from being, a collection of volunteers on a Zoom meeting to being a legal entity in a state that's an actual organization?
Yeah, as far as the legal entity part, that's a matter of like research and policy, talking to the executive board, and like kind of making that happen. It doesn't need to be like a huge organization before it's a legal entity. It just like takes the time to do the research and like what is going to be involved in that. It sounds a little bit like you're asking like at what step do you, move towards enactment as opposed to, building your movement. Which is, as Adam was saying, if you can get like about 1% of the, voters in the state on your list, like that's great. It also seemed, I don't know if this is helpful, but it seemed a little bit like, I don't know, well, correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like a little bit of what you're asking is like, how do you kind of, get that big growth? Like, how do you go from nothing to something? Was that also part of it or not?
Not just how to get the big growth, but I'm just sort of like, you obviously, you don't do the enactment until you already have those big numbers. But it looks like those big, along the way to getting those big numbers, you transition to a point where you're a bunch of volunteers to probably you have paid staff, you've got people who are running your websites, like real infrastructure. And when you sort of do the shift from being a bunch of volunteers to having real infrastructure as you're like ramping up that 2 or 3 or 4 year timeline?
Yeah, I mean, real paid infrastructure is going to come as a function of the amount of donations you're getting, right? So if you can start to get, larger donors by virtue of them seeing that you have a large movement, that you have a bunch of small dollar donations already, that's going to really help there. Yeah, I mean, you don't actually need like paid staff to do any individual thing. It can be really effective to have a ton of volunteers coming in the door, and each individual volunteer is going to feel like there's less on their shoulders if they can be delegating responsibility. That's a huge thing we're like delegate, like let's spread this out as much as we possibly can, because then everyone, having a thing to do makes you feel important. It makes you feel like you have, purpose in this movement, and you do, like you're a very important part in the movement, but it also helps spread out the labor. So, New York, for example, what you're talking about, like, yeah, it's doing really well as a movement, but there's no paid staff yet. That's just a function of bringing good people on the team and matching up their skills with the different teams there. So, yeah, there are a lot of ways to, sort of skin the cat of organizing. I don't like that expression, but if there's a better one, yeah.
You build the metrics and then you show those to major donors, and then those major donors will invest. The illusion, you're not going to win this like Bernie style, everybody gives 27 or 37 bucks. There's not enough human beings that not only know about ranked choice voting, but like it enough to donate to advance it, to add up. The math does not work right now. It's going to take years to get to that point. We do not have the galvanizing issue that you have with Bernie, like riding on Occupy and talking about all the economic woes that appeal to a massive segment of the American population. This doesn't have that yet. If you can figure out what that message is to kind of bring out that fire in everyone, talk to me. Like that's another thing that has to happen in this movement, which I've showed you all these linear charts of growth based on very shoe leather style, like kind of old school, like straight up political organizing. But if we can figure out the online viral potential, make it shareable, make it, a cultural phenomenon, that will blow away our little, exemplar of the best types of RCV organizing. Like, let's not fall into the success trap. Like we've done the best so far, but I think we can exceed it and that's probably what we're doing, like building up all these little cells of like crowdsourced, smart people. Like a lot of people that are attracted to this are brilliant, very engineering types that can like puzzle and solve this. So we get all of them harnessed into this cause. And I think we're going to organically somehow generate that from the bottom up. And one of you in this room might be the person who unlocks that marketing approach or meme or whatever video, 1 minute explainer. There's explainers out there. A lot of them are like after school special, how a bill becomes a law style, not very exciting, kind of tofu.
I gotta say, having been in both organizations, the Yang Gang has way better meme game than the RCV game. So if you have good meme creators who can make it work, like really helpful.
We have some amazing like Twitter trending folks that like are on TikTok and creating video and making all these like cool graphics. So if some of them are as excited about ranked choice voting, like their level of mastery is like game raising. Like when we connected with the income movement, boom, like all of a sudden the online game just changed. So we will try to set up and pull in that group and then see if we can get some of them interested, because I mean, like their knowledge of the tools and how to use them and like what the limits are is very, very sophisticated. Like, yeah.
Is there an online space that we can create for that exact content creator, meme genius?
We will ask, them. But I think somebody Brendan put in the chat, Clubhouse right now is seeming like if you want to get access to influencers. So I don't know if you guys have already started exploring that, but because it's like such a closed circle, Clubhouse only works on iPhone right now. And it's got people like, kind of these.
Yeah, Clubhouse.
Yeah.
Just heard about that. Okay.
That's worth doing because right now they don't have an Android app. So it's kind of like, well, Elon Musk was in a room and then we all just were chatting with him. So it's a lot of people going in there. And so kind of like we were saying with the Larry Summers, there's a lot of people in there right now that it's easy to get in there and then you're chatting with them. So
cool.
it's going to change once it gets more broadly adopted.
If someone wants to like head that up, I mean, we just don't yet have the funding to have like staff doing a lot of the comms digital strategy. We've invested in field very intentionally. We've got a few staff and we're like on the warpath for fundraising to level that up. But in the meantime, if anyone,
I can definitely follow those leads though in the meantime, but we can,
yeah, it'd be super cool to kind of pull those people who are very skilled in our movement into a separate meeting with you guys, let them brainstorm, see if any of them kind of bite and join in, because if they do, you know, they're amazing.
Awesome.
The question that I had that I wanted to ask was, I remember earlier you were talking about like the difference between Mass's loss and Maine and Alaska's win, just like how close that is.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you could talk about that here so other people hear.
Very important. So the stuff we do is all this pre-campaign stuff, movement building. Once you're in the campaign, it's a whole different animal. Winning that campaign is a science. It is, I mean, it's also an art, but there's so much polling and market research, marketing, message testing, focus grouping, qual boards, all the stuff that goes into that. And a whole strategy that you have to roll out. And if there's any part of that strategy that isn't tuned well, or the circumstances which you can't control change, like COVID, that can really mess you up. And you can lose. Even if you build this like great thing backing it, it's not magic. Like it doesn't just organically translate to votes. And a big reason is because low information swing voters. That's why, because we can build a massive movement, but we don't, just because we do that, it doesn't mean we have like total comprehensive penetration of the voting public. We have penetration of certainly the activist class and the political class. We did that really, really well in Massachusetts. But the voters, if you're doing a ballot question, whole different animal. So many voters, they only turn out for presidential election. They don't pay attention to anything else politically. They barely read the paper. They don't really read a lot about politics, or they read just like the top line national news. So they don't know anything about RCV, even after our 3 years of like kicking ass and being in the field and building this thing. So they go to the polls and they see the legal language. And they're like, ranking and ballots are counted in rounds and all this eliminations. And they're like, what the hell is this? No, they just vote no. That's the default. If people don't understand something and it's voting, they vote no by default. So that means your campaign has to not only reach them, so you have a lot of money in the bank to do the paid ads and the earned media, like a good strategy for that, but you have to have the messaging like tuned to that segment. And my little theory is that the messaging may not have quite been right for that segment. And so that now, a lot of our grassroots stuff, we were not involved in the later stage. That was kind of like the pro operatives do it. So that can really mess you up. And then COVID really hurt like the ability to kind of keep the energy out in the field, et cetera. Keep in mind, Alaska won RCV, but it also had this sweetener language called end dark money. And if you were to poll, when you poll RCV, it's like around 50%. It polls higher with youth, like 70 to 85%, and it polls lower with elderly, like 35 to 45%. So, but it's like with the general public, it's around 50. That's a winnable but difficult campaign. But when you add sweetener language like end dark money polls like 80% plus. People are like, yes, they have an immediate yes. End corruption, get money out of politics, end dark money. When they hear ranked choice voting, they're like, huh? So when you add that in, that carried Alaska, and Alaska only won with just over 50%, like 50.6% at the poll. So if they did not have the end dark money language, I could almost guarantee you they would not have won that. Maine won with 52%. That was also very close, and they were challenged a lot by the legislature and the courts, and they had to run it again with the people's veto to protect the law. This territory, like for these statewide wins, like we're doing something really bold. We want to win statewide. It's never been done. Maine was the first to do it, and that's why I founded VCMA. But we're doing something really bold to try to start winning statewide right now. Like it's still the safe bet to just like focus city by city, county by county. And some states are doing that and really have to do that to make progress. They can't just go do statewide campaign. they have statewide branding and marketing, but the actual legal campaign's got to be local. So keep all that in mind. Like, this is really early stage in terms of this being a cultural movement, being known. So it's going to take some years. But remember, we're transforming 200 years of voting tradition. So it shouldn't take 2 to 4 years. That would be way too radical, and shit could go bad really fast. People should deliberate. I mean, in my opinion, and like politicians are going to tell you when you talk to them, like they need time to really sleep on it and think about it. People need time. Just like marriage equality. Excellent analogy. In the 90s, marriage equality, the polling was garbage. It was like 30% public support for gay marriage in the 90s. And so, people were poking around and like, can we do this? And then they finally started getting their house in order, won a couple state cases, did some campaigns, lost a lot of ballot measures, and then started winning more than they were losing in the early 2000s. And here we are today. So it's actually a decent analogy for where we're at with RCV.
Hey, Brendan, are you able to unmute and ask your question about California?
Oh, I was just curious about how things are going in California, what the strategy is there, because I'm moving to Los Angeles in May. So Thanks for
Awesome.
being here. I love it when you guys are here and presenting. This is great.
Thanks. I appreciate it. California is like it's a golden state, golden opportunity for ranked choice voting. Very much untapped grassroots potential there. There are 2 good groups there, Fair Vote California and CFER, Californians for Electoral Reform. They're good at the inside strategy. They know how to move legislation, actually. CFER and Fair Vote got 2 bills through this California legislature to expand the ability for cities to adopt RCV. But they were both vetoed by 2 separate governors, which is a drag. But the fact that they got that far is a testament to their inside skills. Very little to no grassroots. So you don't need grassroots. But our theory of change is that for this to really be mainstreamed across the board and to accelerate the ability, we think that it's vital. And on the other hand, like, yeah, once they go down in flames, they kind of have no, like, where can they go once they get the bill vetoed? We kind of want to offer them like a different approach. Let's start building grassroots. And when you build grassroots too, we're cultivating people who could become donors later, who might have a lot of money, like in the tech sector, Bay Area, Stanford, LA, and start to give 5 and 6 and 7 figure checks to the cause. A lot of tech people love RCV. So we want to meet those tech executives, those startup founders who cash in, VC folks, like we want them investing in this. So yeah, California, we would love to organize there. And we've been talking with CFER. I don't know who's like continuing that conversation, but hopefully this year we will do some kind of big launch. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I know we did have one, this is the final question. Catherine put an answer in the chat, but Serene, you had a pretty good question in the chat. Do you want to come off mute and ask? Or I'll go and read what you wrote. All right, she hasn't unread it, so I'll go up and find it and read it. So the question was basically, is ranked choice voting mostly for primaries? Because GOP would welcome ranked choice vote in general election because they only vote for their own candidate. Are you required to rank all candidates on a ticket? I think it's more just about like, how can we make sure that we don't end up losing out because of this if you're a Democrat, maybe?
Yeah, Maine passed a law, and Massachusetts proposed to use ranked choice voting in the primaries for each party, to use it in their own primary, and then also in the general for all voters. So if you have a crowded primary where the party's like being torn apart by different factions, ranked choice voting is a perfect antidote to keep the party unified. So this could be a good selling point for both Republicans and Democrats. And to ensure that you have the strongest possible person to advance to do battle with their opponent in the general, because they had a really strong footing in their primary. So those work well. You can also have the type of ranked choice voting where and this is promoted by Katherine Gehl and Michael Porter, who are Harvard Business School folks and business leaders. The Final Five system. There you go. There it is. Bam. Where they have 2 rounds where everybody runs in one nonpartisan blanket primary, no party silos at all. It's big free for all. And then you take the top 5 to advance to a second round, and then you use ranked choice voting in that final 5 segment. So untested. This is essentially what Alaska passed, by the way, but it's 4, not 5, but same deal. But they've got some funding. They're advancing that. That's exciting. I think that could be just as revolutionary, if not more so, by ditching all the partisanship during the election. Yeah, so these are just different flavors of the RCV policy.
Potentially hard to convince legislators on that one. So,
oh yeah,
potential downside.
Yeah, a lot of those have to be ballot measure. Yeah, same with RCV. It's just hard. It's fun because it's transcendent. It's so much bigger than the usual partisan merry-go-round. So this has an appeal for people who are tired and kind of burnt out from that usual type of activism. We want to go deeper.
Like Yang people.
Like Yang people, exactly.
Yeah, and for what you were referencing, there is a Yang Speak with Katherine Gehl, if I'm saying her name correctly. That's great if you want to listen. But the book, is called The Politics Industry, How Political Innovation Can Break Partisan Gridlock and Save Our Democracy. I haven't read this all yet, but what I have read has been great, so I highly recommend it to anybody out there.
Yeah,
or listen via the Yang Speaks or the audiobook. So thanks. Katherine, you said you had one final question. I'll pass it over to you.
Yes. So this is for David. David, my understanding is that you have come on as a full-time organizer with Rank the Vote. And if you could just talk about that, what that means. I know you're in our Slack, and I'm just putting in the chat that he's kind of tracking. We just opened up a new partner Rank the Vote channel, and he's also in the decision science. So any debating about STAR versus anything else will go in there and not kind of get into the debates in the Rank the Vote channel. But if you want to talk about what your role is, what your spending time is, how we should interact with you. I mean, it sounds like we're going to try to have a conversation with our like Clubhouse Twitter people to kind of get some social media game maybe going. But if you just want to tell us what to expect and what you're spending your time on, because I bet we're not the only organization you're interfacing with.
No, for sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I've been doing full-time national organizing for 2 weeks now. Before that, I was doing part-time for a few months. And so, yeah, that involves, a lot of like sitting in and advising the various state movements and their team leads meetings and exec meetings, as well as I came from a data background, so doing some data work. So it's kind of a smorgasbord, and I'm learning the ropes as one does when they start full time. But yeah, as far as the Humanity First movement, I think I'm going to be the main interface for y'all, between us, and if there are meetings and forums in which it makes sense to bring in Adam or our lead national organizer Monica, then I'm happy to do that. But yeah, as far as these Slack channels, as far as any sort of connection, I think I'm going to be the sort of main interface here. Yeah, I mean, I'm really happy to help in any way I can, and I'm happy to bring people into our movement, and I think this could be the start of a really good partnership. So
sweet.
I mean, and I have a special desire to try to get audience with Andrew Yang himself at some point, so folks have some path for that. I feel like he's talked a lot about RCV. I want him to put up some funding for it, whatever form that may be. I'm sure he has like 100 other people in line for something, but given that it's like his top 5 issues, I feel like it would be a good fit for him. Not necessarily himself, but he's probably got a network of folks that he could be in a room and be like, look, just throw down $500,000 to this thing. Wouldn't be difficult to do. I know some people are laughing, but like, and I'm not a fundraiser, but I've become one because I realize these folks who like have these means, that's how they think. They're not in, I approach people who are like, I'm like, can you help fund Massachusetts? Can you write a 50K or 100K check? And they're like, just Massachusetts? I give like 10 million to XYZ thing. Talk to me about a 10-state strategy. Like, let's move the needle nationally. I'm like, damn. So I had to like recalibrate my brain to think like some of these super wealthy people, and then just like, it's like the same ROI it's like the same time investment for me to have a conversation. I just have to like be super, super epically ambitious beyond like my upbringing of being on free lunches growing up from like middle and high school to like think like that. And then you unlock, like you're having that conversation at that level and they really respect what you're doing. And they're like, oh shit, like they're fucking serious. This isn't like Cub Scouts. So that's what we're doing. So if you guys, want to help with that,
My recommendation is to have David join the New York Slack and, because I think they have regular state meetings. I forget how often. And then if you did a presentation like this, I feel like there are people that would attend that New York State meeting that are kind of socially connected in with the people that are close to Yang. And that's the way to him right now, because they're dead set on getting all, well, yeah. So I mean, like every single bit of money that they can wrangle is going right into that mayoral campaign, because that's the game that they're playing.
Right.
But I feel like he does have this openness that he'd be like, sure, I'd take a meeting. And he's he would definitely like do the handoff. And I think some of the people around him are like Jack Dorsey. So,
awesome.
That would be the strategy, is getting David into that Slack and then doing a presentation like this there. And then the appropriate people will be impressed and, come to you, is my naive advice about how to do it.
Bing, boom, done.
Good.
And I think they would be so happy to hear from you right now too, because I know that they are focusing on like trying to do some educational campaigns around ranked choice right now, because they're going to have their first election via ranked choice. So they would probably be great to connect with.
Could someone add me on that New York Slack? Is that?
I will. They're kind of controlling about it. You got to sign up. You got to go into the link. You got to like sign up as a volunteer, and then they do the onboarding, and then they bring you in, and you just.
Hey guys, I'm in incognito mode. Yeah, cool.
You could definitely poke them and let them know you're coming though, so they know to expect.
Sounds great.
You.
Sounds great.
Yes. Well, we are coming up on 10 o'clock, so I guess we'll start to wrap this up. Are there any like final kind of statements you want to make to kind of close out your presentation before we go off of the live stream?
I've made enough statements. I think that we've covered it. David?
Yeah, I mean, as I said at the beginning, this is just a really, big confluence between two things that I think are really, really about getting off of that political hamster wheel and, making something actually happen. So really excited to work with you guys to make that happen. So.
And I think we're very excited because our members want to do high quality, effective things. They really like volunteering with Income Movement because they're dialed in and use volunteers effectively. And it's super clear that you and the movements that you advise that are following those playbooks are, you know what you're doing and you're using volunteers effectively. So that's, I feel like our states want to lean in. So I feel like we have a nice complementary growth path. So awesome. I'm excited for our collaboration.
Yeah, we are too. This is great. Good cultural fit, I think, with how we approach the stuff, the rigor, the data-based push for this stuff. Read that playbook if you haven't. You'll learn a lot, hopefully. And I'm always up for feedback. If something seems like too vague or off in some way, let me, shoot me an email. Because it's all a living document and we're always updating it. Here's my email, phone number. Feel free to reach out anytime.
Great.
All right.
Ronald has a question here. Meeting coming up with something bring to the meeting and help push forward. Well, Ronald, I think it's rooted in that playbook. Like the chapters can be little microcosms of like the full state effort. So set goals. Work with your chapter to say like, what do we want to set goals for list building, money and endorsements? Is that something you're already doing or something?
Kind of. I know that they've been reaching out to different organizations to try to set up meetings like what you're doing right now to set up presentations.
Yep.
But as far as that acts for that part of it, I don't think they haven't done anything just yet.
That's fine.
And again, because
You don't have to do it all. So you can do like just list building goal for the month. Hey guys, like how many people can we build into our lists for the next month? 200 new people, whatever that number is, like set that and then drive, like just focus the chapter on those numbers. You don't have to deal with if like people don't have the skills to do fundraising yet. Just defer that, just wait, kick the can on that and like focus on stuff that you can build skills faster to do. And like, how many speakers do you guys have trained in your chapter, for instance?
as far as I know, possibly 2. And
That's awesome.
It's covering like 5 counties.
Fantastic. Okay, so if you can like make sure, set a goal that you're going to train like 1 or 2 new speakers every month, is that reasonable?
I think that should be good. Yeah, I can bring that up. Yeah.
And then you have your endorsements team like have the list of all the other orgs in your counties. And then they're setting up, they're scheduling the talks. And then it's like, how many are you going to set up each month? I mean, this is kind of some like how many outreach actions are you going to do? Like how many emails are you going to send to these orgs, per month to get, 20% of them to respond and to do a gig that month or something. So put those to numbers and have the group like define those numbers with you, put it in a Google Doc, everyone looks at it and you keep revisiting it. And then you create your line charts for your chapter. Like, boom, we just did, we just signed up 100 new people, got 3 new endorsements this month. Awesome.
Okay, that sounds good. It sounds like a plan. I can actually bring that up. So
yeah,
sweet. Thank you.
Cool. Sure. Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys for joining us. And yeah, to be continued.
Good to meet you all. Good to see some familiar faces as well. See you guys the next one, hopefully.
All right.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your time and your advice and your knowledge and all of that. I will take us off the live stream now, so anyone who wants to hang around for a casual hang, go for it. But thank you for joining us out in the YouTube live stream world, and we'll see you in 2 weeks next Sunday. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Good night.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.